It is an honor to be here with some of our youth this morning as we share about our experiences in Kentucky on our summer service learning trip or mission trip. All of our junior and senior high youth are invited into this classroom this morning, and so we'll continue to welcome them in, and you all are welcome to have a seat wherever. Good to see everyone. This year's Social Justice Forum's theme is investing in each other's future. And I think that you will hear lots of resonance between this theme and our experiences in Appalachia this summer and what we brought home with us, which was a lot. Through social justice forums at Westminster, we aim to learn about opportunities for engagement and action for Westminster community members to ensure that all of our neighbors can thrive and flourish. To better understand the structures and systems that have failed many of our neighbors, to explore how we can work together to build better outcomes, and to respond to Krista Tippett's insightful question and charge from our opening joint forum this year. She asked, who will we be for each other? Who will we be for each other? So this is a great question, and I think it responds and invites us to respond in particular ways according to what we have learned this year on our mission trip. So our forum this morning includes leaders from Westminster's Senior High Youth Group, and I'll introduce them in just a moment. We will share about our learning trip to Breathitt County, Kentucky, where we worked with an organization called Appalachia Service Project on 2 different housing reconstruction projects. And we worked with ASP, whose mission is to help make homes warmer, safer, and drier. Before we get started, just a couple of items related to your participation in the forum this morning. If you're attending here in the Meisel room, if you have comments or questions throughout our presentation, I invite you to just raise your hand. We'll bring you a microphone, and that helps for amplification in the room and also helps you to be heard on the live stream. And then if you're attending via live stream, you are invited to share your comments or questions via the chat feature on the live stream, which we will be monitoring throughout this morning. So our agenda for this morning will include sort of a presentation about our trip and then a more extended question and answer with 6 of us who were part of the team, including some adult leaders and as well as some youth. So welcome. And I'd like to open us with a word of prayer. Let's pray. Holy God, we give you thanks for the gift of learning to serve you, to serve our neighbors, to seek justice, and to be with one another in mutual learning and community. We pray that you would be with us in this time of gathering, that we would learn how to serve you well. Amen. So, as I mentioned, our forum this morning, we'll get to hear some of what our youth did this summer in Kentucky. So if you're here in the room and you were on the Kentucky trip, raise your hand. Everybody look around. Yeah, so it's awesome. And our junior highs are here this morning because I want them to get to hear about the experience of going on a senior high mission trip. It's so fun. It's longer than the junior high mission trip. You get to go farther away than the junior high mission trip. It's awesome, totally awesome. But I have no agenda here. Just wanted you guys in the room. It's great. So we traveled to Breathitt County, Kentucky to work with Appalachia Service Project for a week, Monday through Friday in July. We had 20 youth and 8 adult leaders, brave adult leaders who accompanied us to sleep on a gym floor for a week. It was lovely. And so I want to introduce the 2 of our youth leaders who will help to lead our Social Justice Forum presentation. This is Madeline Martin, giveaway of Madeline. Madeline is a senior, one of our youth elders, wonderful leader in the youth group. And this is Jace. Hi, Jace, one of our sophomores, also a leader in the youth group. And I'm grateful that they will share with me in presenting some of our experiences in Appalachia. So I want to sort of start by sharing a little bit as the pastor that gets the privilege and joy of working with these young people, some of sort of the biblical and theological background for why we do what we do on service learning trips, mission trips. So our devotions throughout the week, I create sort of a devotion book for our youth and leaders to use throughout the mission trip weeks. And this past summer, they were all centered around the prophets. So when I talk with younger children at church about the prophets, I often say that the prophets were the people in the Older Testament whom God called to speak messages to God's people. Sometimes those messages were pretty encouraging and easy for the people to hear, and a lot of times they were not so easy for the people to hear. They were challenging. And when I talk with older youth, like these youth leaders, about the prophets, I add that the prophets were often calling for an overturning of the whole social order. The prophets were the people in the Older Testament who were called to speak truth in the face of power. And so they give us a great deal of sort of biblical underpinning for what we do in thinking about the world that God imagines for us and how we can live into that world. The prophets had access to God's vision of a community where all people could flourish. So this summer on our trip in Appalachia, we spent time with the prophets, and we listened for how they would push us to be more faithful in our daily living, to see the world as God desires it. And as my colleague Elena shared with us last Sunday morning, it's hard and holy work to imagine a better future. That's what the prophets call us to imagine, to stretch our imaginations to see the world as God would desire it. And so one of the ways that we are called to do the work of service, of serving our neighbors in the summertime on these mission trips, is by living into that call of the prophets. And that was part of our call this summer. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Madeline as she shares a little bit more about background of how we go about our learning trips, service trips.
Hi, you all. Good morning. That was very nice. Um, so, our mission trips yearly will choose an organization, and our main focus with choosing an organization is one in which we can find that we'll get something out of it, but they'll also get something out of it. And so we don't want to go and just put all of our energy into doing something that makes us feel good, but we do want some sort of impact and something that'll actually impact an organization. And we do want to make an honest effort at making sure this organization stands for Westminster's morals and values and that we're able to do really good work. One thing I always have to preface mission trips when I tell my friends about them is that it's not a mission trip in the sense of what you would think of when you hear that. I'm not going cross country to try and spread religion. I'm not going and finding children and saying God will be with you. Our main goal is to do some sort of good work and impact people's lives in the amount we can do in a week. And we know that we're not changing any lives in 1 week, but we're able to do some amount of work that'll make somebody's life easier. And this year it was an attempt to make somebody's house warmer, safer, and drier. So we chose Appalachian Service Project. Our whole goal was that we would spend time with neighbors. We would work to create a safer environment. We really did really engage with this organization, which we'll talk about more later. But we tried to find a space in which we can reflect on our own community and also find a new community to share our space with, do work with, and hope to find some sort of lesson that we can bring back to our community to continue this movement, I would say, of seeking justice. A big part of it is relationship building. It's a really great way for the high school youth group to really get to know each other, to really bond, to understand each other on a deeper level. I'll say it's really hard to not become great friends with someone when they're trying to hold the ladder for you. There's a level of fear there, but it instantly will bond you, and it's a really important thing for the youth group, and that's why we continue doing these things. Yeah, I'd like to pass it on to back to Alexandra.
So I wanted to share just a little bit of background about why we chose this organization. There are lots and lots of different ways to sort of plan and lead a mission trip. And I know some of my pastoral colleagues are in this room who have done this before. There are many, many ways to do it. Laura Lee's in the back. How many mission trips have you been on? Too many, she says. 20 probably. I don't know. I don't even know. So many. So this was a year where I knew that we wanted to partner with an organization that was doing really good work, grounded in mutuality, grounded in the community that we were going to serve. Partly because we were sort of at a juncture point in our own personnel in the youth group, right? I was sort of leading the youth group and having my pastoral responsibilities, and I thought, we're not going to build something from the ground up this year. We're going to partner with somebody who totally knows what they're doing. And I had known lots of colleagues through seminary who have worked with Appalachia Service Project before, felt excited about the mission that they were doing, and so that's where we ended up going. But before that, our seniors typically, and we have a practice in the Westminster Youth Group of our seniors getting to sort of have a hand in planning the trip. So we went through a pretty long discernment process, lots of Zoom calls and coffee conversations with the seniors to think about what kind of a trip were they feeling called to. The group of seniors that graduated last year, who sadly aren't here this morning because they're all off at college doing amazing things, definitely at church this morning, right? Yeah, totally. So those seniors, the sort of context for where they were in their lives, they had been through COVID, right? They had, I think, one trip in person out of state before this one last year in their whole high school career. And that was a great one. They went to Greensboro, North Carolina, worked on tiny homes. It was an amazing trip. And then the couple of summers during COVID, we stayed in the area because we needed to keep ourselves and our neighbors safe. And so this group of seniors felt really strongly that they wanted to go somewhere, do something sort of hands-on where they might get to see a sense of progress from start to finish of the week. And you guys who were on the trip, would you say we got to do that? Yeah, I would say so. We were at the same two homes, and Jace is going to tell us more about this, but the same two homes Monday through Friday working on the same projects. You can see a before and after picture, and it was really cool, the sort of tangible work that we got to do. So I wanted to share a few of the guiding principles of Appalachia Service Project. And I wonder, actually, is there anyone in the room who had heard of ASP before? Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's a great organization. And actually, Brent Hall was one of our adult leaders, and he figured out sort of in the process of committing to the mission trip that he had been on an ASP trip as a teenager. So they've been around doing really good work in the communities in Appalachia for a really long time. So some of the guiding principles of ASP, this first one feels really important. They believe in the flourishing of the whole human community. So they say, we believe that each person is a child of God, imbued with dignity and worth. Really important. They believe that everyone should have access to affordable, safe, and sanitary housing. Also really basic, something that we believe at Westminster as well. They believe in good stewardship of resources and quality of work, which is really important. You've got high schoolers and unskilled labor people coming in to do things like lay vinyl siding and replace a tin roof. They did a lot to sort of teach us how to do that really well. And then I'm quoting here from their list of mission values. We believe in ministering in the spirit of love, acceptance, and hopefulness. So that was really important to our seniors as we were thinking about where we might feel led on a mission trip last year. And then the last thing I'll raise about ASP is that they have really deep roots in the communities that they serve. And I do want to say, and we'll talk about this maybe a little later in the Q&A portion of our time together this morning, that can be a complicated thing, right? Every summer, this group of college students and high school students sort of plants themselves in these communities around Appalachia, does really amazing work, and then leaves. And so we were encouraged to think throughout the week about what kind of model of service is that? Is that a kind of model of service that we would want to be committed to? Just raises really interesting questions. So I'm happy for us to sort of reflect more on that in the panel part of our morning now. But I'd like to invite Jace to share a bit about what the trip actually looked like.
So when we traveled to Kentucky, we stayed overnight at two churches, one on the way there, one on the way back. Super grateful to those churches because I couldn't imagine trusting my church with like 20-ish youth in there to stay overnight. I wouldn't let anybody stay in my church. Uh, We spent Monday through Friday working full days on 2 different house projects. So we split into 2 groups, and then we worked on those projects. And I can tell you, like, working a full day as a teenager with other teenagers and having to work as like a group, it can get kind of heated at times. But we had a pastor, so everything was sorted out. In the evenings and like breakfast and dinner, we spent times at the site with like our group and like doing like a little like with the whole like the Westminster group and the other group that was with us from Iowa, and we would do like a little community thing in the morning, and that was like it was really cool to hear about like what their experiences were and like how they were doing on their site, because we were all on different sites, so you didn't really get a bunch of time to spend with this other group, so it was cool to like hear from them. um so when we worked on the homes, like they weren't like completely finished homes. We needed to make them like warmer, safer, drier, and it was like a long project, but it was super like rewarding at the end once you finished making a home safer for the uh for the people that lived there. It was like super rewarding. So is that it?
Yeah, that's great. So I wonder, Jace and Madeline, you two worked on different homes throughout the week. So I wonder, Jace, could you tell us, this was your group, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what actually you all were doing on that home.
So on that home, the siding was not like amazing, and it wasn't just not amazing. It was like it wasn't working, and it was not matching. And a lot of it isn't just like making it safe. A lot of it's making it like into an actual like home. Like and you can live in anything. Anything can be a house, but to make it a home means like you can feel like this is my home. This is my property. I take pride in this. And a lot of it, like we did a bunch of like siding. We redid the roof. We put tin roof on there, and it was just really like important that we could make it so that like this was just it wasn't a house built by a bunch of teenagers. It was an actual home. So
That's great. Thanks, Jace. And then Madeline, you were part of the group that I was part of here. So picture on the right was one of our projects at that home, which was digging a drainage ditch. Yeah, in the Kentucky heat. It was awesome. Katrina's son, Victor, was the superstar of that group with a pickaxe, just going at the ditch. And it was pretty amazing. We could sort of see the progress from start to finish of the week, and we finished that project throughout the course of the week. And then Madeline, tell us about the group here on the left, which Owen was also part of, what you all were working on.
Yeah, so we worked on a vinyl siding project, which I had never done or been comfortable near ladders doing. And so, as somebody with a fear of heights, I really did have to quickly come over that. We were able to side 3 of the 4 walls of the house, which was super important. We got about halfway up the 4th wall. A lot of like measurements went into this because it was a frame house, and so the roof, like you had to make sure that the little like panel would fit in. If you've ever heard of like J line, P line, these were things that I got very familiar with. The little snippy things were very scary and very loud to cut with. We worked on the door frame. We redid on her front porch. We kind of framed in her door. She had this really beautiful, the resident in the house had this really beautiful old wood like door frame, and she really wanted to make sure that that had stayed because her husband like made a point of like having that on the house. And so we were able to frame that out really nicely. It looked beautiful. We worked on a little bit of like making sure we didn't cut wires, which was a little nerve-wracking. But I think another really important thing to note was like we learned that shade is a really important resource because our house had shade and the house that Jace was at did not. And so as you can see, like it was in the 90s, you had to wear work pants. It was advised that you wore like some sort of like heavy t-shirt. And so it was hot. And it was like to be a teenager doing some sort of work that you've never had an experience doing was like a little disarming, but also like full like body experience. There was like not a day that people got back to the elementary school we were staying at and we're like, wow, I have so much energy. There was very, very sad lines of people sitting, waiting for the showers. But it was also really important, you know? There was such a like rewarding feeling seeing like a wall be finished and then being able to like look at that and be like, okay, I did that. Like that was something that we put physical energy into, and now it's like warmer and it'll protect the house. And it was really, really cool.
Yeah, another thing I would point out is what's happening in these two pictures. So Jace mentioned that we were staying at a center in Breathitt County with another group from Creston, Iowa, small town in Iowa, which was delightful. They had been coming to ASP every summer for 30 years. Yeah, so amazing. So sort of that's their mission trip experience every single year. So when we showed up, no idea what we were doing. We were like, okay, Iowans, you got to show us the ropes here. And it was awesome. So every morning we would start, and our center leaders, who were college students, amazing college students who ran the whole center, would gather us for morning prayer. I would say the best part was being woken up every morning in the gym with the like pounding music that they played. Wouldn't you guys say that was a highlight? I'm just kidding. But it happened every morning. It was great. And so then we went out and we prayed every morning. And then in the evenings, the picture on the right there is a picture of one of our experiences where they would lead us in worship and devotion time. We would learn a little bit more about the culture and history of the region. And I think that was one of the highlights of the trip, and also one of the moments where we thought, wow, we wish we had more of that. That would have led us, I think, a little deeper into the experience. Couple more pictures. If you know Janice at the church, her son there is on the roof. Scary, but awesome. So one of the things that we were challenged by was returning home from a mission trip. What are you going to do with the learning and the experience that you've had? And one of the unfortunate things that happened 2 weeks after we were home, so this horrible flooding event happened in eastern Kentucky. Does anyone remember hearing about this on the news? Yeah, it was sort of a national news event. And this was exactly where we were. So as we thought back to that drainage ditch that we dug, we thought, I hope Miss Joyce's house is safe and dry now because we helped to dig that ditch. So I want to share a video that Appalachia Service Project put out following the flood to share a little bit about what happened and about their efforts in the area.
This was my aunt's home, my mom's twin sister. And the water, when they looked out from my mom's house, you could just see the top of the roof. That's how deep the water was. And so you had this big creek, and there's a little branch of water, and when we go out there, I'll show you just how small that creek is. And the wall of water that came out of this holler was what nobody anticipated. And so when you got that big creek and this little one that's now a big raging river, they meet. And so it was just filled with water all down in here. And they had a beautiful yard. And that's completely destroyed. I mean, it's just mud everywhere. And this house has so many memories. This is where my mom and all of her brothers and sisters grew up. And it's gonna have to be torn down now. I mean, there's just no way to save it. My papa used to shave right here, and there was a little shelf here, and he'd take out the old Spice stuff that he used and put it and had an old razor, and he'd stand right there and shave. So mean, that's a memory, you know, it's going to be gone. Because it's like these are the places where we played and we had just wonderful times with family, sitting on these porches. You know, my cousin Jody was so proud of his place here, and just for him to lose it is just absolutely heartbreaking. I played basketball games on this driveway and touched football in that yard, and it's just, will it ever be the same again?
The damage covers over 4,800 square miles of eastern Kentucky through counties that ASP has served for decades. Many have said this flood has brought the most widespread devastation that eastern Kentucky has ever seen. It is being called a 1,000-year flood. The challenge before us is immense. This is the biggest rebuilding effort that ASP and this region has ever undertaken. It will take many years, thousands of volunteers, and millions of dollars. Our neighbors need your support, and they need your prayers.
So a powerful sort of visual video reminder of what happened in that region recently. And I think we were reminded of the ways that we can sort of live in our own silos here, whether we live in the city or in a suburb or wherever, where we may or may not have paid attention to this happening if we hadn't just been on a trip to the Appalachian region. And so as soon as this hit the news, students were texting me, what can we do? What can we do? And so Madeline's going to share one of the things that we did a little bit of.
Yeah, so a handful of the youth that were on the trip made an effort to research mutual aid efforts within Appalachia and specifically the Breathitt County area. We wanted to make sure that any money we put towards the area would be like going directly to people, because reflecting on our trip, we knew there was a lot of ways in which communities could do more harm than good in terms of like donations. And then we really wanted to be mindful of how we went about this, because we didn't want to just donate blindly. We wanted to make sure that we would be helping people, because we all had some level of connection to the area, and we had spent so many nights like kind of just invested in this culture, and so we wanted to make sure that we were really mindful of how we went about this. We found 3 different mutual aid groups that we sent out to our youth group. I don't remember the names of them, but if you're wondering, I have them all written down so I can let you know after. But it was just a way that like we couldn't do anything outside of just donating, right? It was kind of hard to realize we did all of this work, and then also we shouldn't have any ownership over this work because it was not our home, and we put in maybe a week's worth of work and we're teenagers, but how do we really handle such a massive crisis that's impacting people's whole lives? And so it was really difficult to handle literally 2 weeks after the mission trip, but kind of trying to reflect on what we did and what we could do currently was really important as a like youth group reflection post mission trip situation.
Yeah, thanks, Madeline. So I'm going to shift now into the three of us will share just one major takeaway that each of us had from the trip, and then we'll shift into a question and answer time. So I invite you to think about your questions that you have for our young people, and also for Summer and Tom, who were two of our wonderful adult leaders on the trip. So I'll share just one among many takeaways for me was that I was grateful to work as part of an organization that I already trusted because I trusted people who trusted them, right? Those are the kinds of connections that we often have. And I knew that they would be a part of the community for a long time. And I wish that we had done more as a group to learn more about advocacy efforts that we could respond to once we returned home. So that was one of the takeaways that I had. I think I was so grateful to Madeline and to our youth who immediately were like, we got to find some mutual aid ways to respond financially to what's happening. And I thought, what if we had spent a little more time in our group reflection time thinking about seeking justice when we get back home, advocating for safe, affordable housing here in the city, thinking about justice and equity where we live. So that's my takeaway.
Yeah, I am a very bookish person. I'm very word oriented. I really think it's important to like study theories and things. I really love books. And so I did tons and tons of research. I was so excited going into the week. And by Friday, I was like, I had zero idea of anything that would go on. I had no idea what this like experience would be. And it's totally changed, right? My whole perception of what I thought would happen was different. My experience just doing the work was different, but also actually being able to understand pieces of a culture through experience is so much more important. That was really, really impactful because it kind of opened my eyes to the idea of like, you can't learn anything without a sense of experience about people. I think that was really, really important. And so I know that like going out of mission trip, I've made a very honest effort to like put myself into more like experience-based learning situations. And then also understanding that that's not always possible. And just because I had an experience doesn't mean anybody knows the most on a subject or I have any idea of what an Appalachian like culture really represents. And so I know we had like a culture night and it was going to an ice cream shop, right? Like I kind of wish that on the trip we had had more of like an understanding of the culture, but at the same time, you can't necessarily teach things about culture to people who have zero idea what it was. And so I was just sort of reflecting on how we interact as a like people and how we interact going somewhere trying to like create change.
Yeah, so unlike Madeline, I'm not a very bookish person. I didn't read anything going into it. I know Alexandra like suggested, read a little bit. I didn't read anything about it.
Okay, James.
I just went in there like not knowing anything, but I ended up being extremely lucky because it played into like I have background knowledge about construction, and that ended up playing into that, and I'm okay with going on ladders. It was no fear of heights. Just for Laura Lee that I'd fall off, but no, I think my biggest takeaway though was like the actual feeling that you got from completing a project that was life-changing. Well, the unfortunate flood happened, but it was life-changing for like a certain amount of time that like it completely changed the way that the house owner was living. So,
Thanks, you all. So I'm going to shift now to a Q&A part of our time together. So maybe Jason, Madeline, if you scoot your chairs over there. Perfect. Okay, we're going to sit right in the middle of the screen. Perfect. So I'd like to introduce a couple of other folks who were part of the trip with us this summer. Tom Northenskold. And Tom, thank you. Tom is responsible for all of the pictures that you saw as part of our presentation. And if you want to see more, I can share them with you. They're amazing. So thanks, Tom. Owen Tortlett, a sophomore here at Westminster who was part of the trip. And Summer Reed, one of our youth leaders. This was Summer's first mission trip as part of Westminster Youth Group, and so we're super grateful that she was part of the trip with us. So I am going to pull up the live stream chat, see what's going on there, and I'm going to start you all with sort of a softball question, a shout out to the junior highs in the room. If you are a junior high student, why should you go on a mission trip in high school?
Okay, as somebody who went on a junior high mission trip and felt very impacted by it, I will say, my junior high class, we went to northern Minnesota. That was super cool. The mission trip is like, in my opinion, one of the most important things you can do with the youth group. You're not only putting so much of yourself into work, but you're getting so much of your peers as well. And so I think no matter what work you're doing, what you're learning, if you're doing work, you're gaining so much, and by the end of the week you'll feel so many emotions. There was a lot of tears the last day for so many reasons: exhaustion, heat, hunger, seniors. But all in all, like, I think the mission trip is a really good way to kind of understand your community, understand people near you, and to build another sense of community. I think the youth group is a really special place. And it's a really good way to engage with the youth group. And like, you have to get to know these people or it will be very, very miserable for you. And so I think it's a really cool way. And everybody's very willing to make new friends and get to know people. I'm very pro mission trip at Westminster.
Yeah, I'm extremely pro mission trip too. I think it was Alexandra that said this to either me or a group once, that was like, check your cool at the door or something like that.
Oh, did I say that? Probably. Yeah, check your cool at the door. It's cool.
Which I think is like, I think it is an amazing experience, but it's especially an amazing experience, but you have to make it an amazing experience for yourself. You need to be able to be like, I want to be a part, I want to be doing everything that I can do. I want to be doing all the experience. I'm not too cool to do anything on the mission trip. I want to do everything that the group's doing. And I think if you do that, you get to make some amazing like relationships and friendships that are extremely valuable, and you'll get to grow and change a lot as a person.
Well, was not a high school student on this trip, but I will say, oh, yeah, okay, can you hear me? Yeah. I will say I went on the trip having never met any of the high schoolers or any of the, like, besides Alexandra, any of the other adult leaders. So as a junior high student, don't be afraid to go if you don't know anyone or if you're not close with anyone, because I feel like after 1 week, I was like, I know these people and I trust them holding, a nail while I'm hammering or, whatever. Like, you get close pretty fast. So it was fun.
It was definitely a learning experience for me, not only because of like the construction aspect of it, but also just like to see how some other people live who are like less fortunate and in need of a bit of help. And just being able to provide that help was like really fulfilling for me.
So both our daughters have gone on lots of mission trips, and what I would say is, as much as you give on a mission trip, you get back tenfold.
Does anyone in the room have a question you'd like to ask our panelists this morning? Got it.
Okay, I'll just start off by saying at my wife's and I previous church before we came to Westminster, I was a youth leader, and so I've been on 6 or 7 mission trips with youth. All of ours were west instead of east, but so a couple of things I wanted to bring up is, I think Madeline mentioned at one point in your first comments that you're not going to change somebody's life in a week. I think you did change the life of this person. Don't sell yourself short. The second thing, I was just on the men's retreat yesterday, And we had a question during one of the sessions of when you felt closest to God. And I remember when I was on the mission trips with our youth at my previous church, certainly those times we journaled all the every day during when we were there for 20 minutes or a half hour or whatever. And some of our mission trips were in the mountains and whatnot, so it was very scenic, very nature and whatnot. And those have been among the times when I have felt closest to God, and I think our youth as well. And so I'm wondering, the question for you is, did you experience sometime that you might have felt closer to God while you were on this mission trip? And then, do you have any, because I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on how to bring that closeness to God back to your daily life here, because now all of a sudden you're not focused on the mission trip and everything. Your daily life comes back with all the things that happen in daily life. And so how do you keep that feeling and then bring that back to the present time? If you have any thoughts on that.
Whoever wants to go with that one.
Yeah, I think I had never been that deep in the mountains in Appalachia. I'd been to the Rockies, and that's a very different experience. And we would get up at 7 a.m. every morning. We were woken up to Creedence Clearwater. It was very loud and 6:55. But you'd go outside, and it'd be these beautiful, beautiful sunrises and just such intense fog over the mountains. And then you were held in prayer. You would hold the hands of people next to you. I was often between Iowa people, so I didn't know the people next to me. But it was one of those moments where it's like you just ground yourself for the beginning of the day. You find a space to like have a moment for you, have a moment for your community, and that was really important and something I'm trying to bring into my life. I can't say that it's easy necessarily, and it gets harder as the weather gets colder and I want to spend a little less time outside early in the morning. But I think finding a way to ground myself at the beginning of the day, find a space for me, find a space for community, find a space for God is really important to kind of set yourself up for the day and like find a space to be present.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what Madeline said is, I think that it was a really like scheduled days. Like it was like you knew what you were doing like 4 days in advance for the Friday on the Monday, and I think that that is something that I'm trying to bring more into my life. Is I'm able to find like structure around sports, but I think that if like it was a really structured day, like you get up at this time, you do this, you'd eat breakfast at this time, and I think that is just like so wonderful for like your mental health and your physical health too.
Yeah, I would say where I saw God the most was just in the community building. Within our group, we spent a lot of time like in the vans on the drive to Kentucky. That was, long days there, but then just also on the work sites. I think just getting to see kind of where everyone's strengths were. Like Jace was saying, he had experience with construction. A lot of us didn't, and so just kind of finding ways to support one another and like build each other up. I kind of took the role of like safety officer. I just like went around, make sure everyone was wearing their safety glasses, whatever. So just, in community building, and then kind of in interacting with people in the Breathitt County area, recognizing, I think a lot of students were commenting that week of like, we're not that different, even though we're in different state, fairly different culture. It's like, yeah, we're not that different. So I think, and then bringing that back here, it's like, continuing to engage with the Westminster youth group and community and just, being here on Sunday, it's like, oh yeah, I feel welcome, and this is where I see God in people, even if I don't know you all, so I think that's how I continue to bring that back.
Okay, see if y'all can just jump right in. Can you hear me?
I'll just add a little bit in relation to what Summer was saying. I think connecting with people for me is a spiritual thing, whether it's the youth or the people we were working with and helping, that's really, really meaningful.
Thanks, you all. I'm seeing a question in the live stream chat, which is around preparing for the trip. What was most helpful for you, whether it was materials that I shared that you engaged ahead of time, or just your own sort of personal preparation for a trip like this?
Okay. I was pretty big into podcasts the weeks before. I thought that it was going to be important to like hear actual voices, kind of get that experience. Alexandra had shared a podcast called Black in Appalachia, I think. Yeah. Okay. And I listened to that right before the mission trip, and then I know some of the vans going up listened to that. Our first night before, so we left Saturday morning. Saturday night we were in Indianapolis, and we spent our small group time kind of reflecting on what we were expecting from the week, what we were nervous about, what we were feeling, all of our thoughts and feelings and emotions. And I thought that was really important to kind of like get us ready and talk with community and like be like, oh, you're worried about this too. Okay, I'm not alone on that. Or like, I've never done this sort of thing before, and I really don't know how well I'm gonna do. And I felt like that was really good for me to be like, okay, I'm not the only one afraid of ladders, right? It was, I think, having that like kind of community-based thing was really important. So that like you kind of got in this like, okay, we're all in this together right off the bat before you even have to go into the intensity of the work.
Yeah, I'm doing it again this year, obviously, and I'm definitely gonna prepare differently. I don't think I brought sunscreen. Definitely a mistake. I think I was using one of the seniors' sunscreens like every day, and then I just stopped using it by the third day, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get burnt. And I think you really gotta, Alexandra puts out this awesome list of like things you should bring,
A
and
packing list.
I think you should listen to the packing list. I think it's there for a reason.
Well, I didn't really do much preparing before the trip, but immediately after the first day, when I kind of got my first taste of like what the work was, I was kind of worried because like it's gonna have to do that for 4 more days. But then after the second day, when we had kind of made some real progress, and I could see like how happy that made the homeowner there, that kind of took some of the worry off of my mind.
Oh, and you were on ditch digging crew, right? No, I was on. Oh, you were on sighting. Sorry. Still, it took a lot of. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, we had shit.
That is correct. Other questions in the room, you all, for these mission trip participants?
Long ago, as you might guess from my gray hair, I was a small part as an ally with my late husband for the LGBTQ plus movement for ordination. And at that time, when I'm thinking now about the comments several of you made about community building, I just felt then, and I still feel, that the Holy Spirit, God, if you will, is for me primarily in the human connection and the God within, the divine spark that is in all of us, with maybe one exception that comes to mind. But, sorry. But anyway, that is just that plus the beautiful places, certainly also, but just the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. So I hope to join this church, but we'll see.
This is a somewhat self-serving question, but I'm wondering what each of you would say about why adults should join the youth mission trips.
Okay, I can speak. We had a handful of adults who had never met the youth group. I know going in, I read the list of adults and I was like, I have no idea who half of these people are. Summer was on that list. I was like, I like the name Summer. That sounds really exciting. I bet she's really nice. Maybe pretty sunny. And she is. I think that the youth group, you're gonna think, okay, teenagers are really mean, teenagers are weird, like, ugh. But I think it's really important to like give us a chance. In a very genuine sense, I've made some really strong connections with the adults in the youth group. I'm looking right at Laura Lee right now. We're staring Laura Lee down. But you get so much out of it, I think, as an adult, and you really do build a community. It is really nice to be able to look around the church and recognize people and be like, oh my gosh, remember when we got the siding done, or when you didn't hammer my hand? And also, you have really intense conversations. Like, I've had very, very deep conversations about spirituality. I would also say this for retreats, right? Like, there's some really beautiful conversations to be had. There's a lot of very deep thoughts in the youth group. And it's really something that you should give a chance. If you've ever wondered about what it would be like, you could go for the retreat. That's just a couple days, you know? That's like a test run for the mission trip. But it's really special. The youth group's really special, and we're not mean, I promise.
Yeah, I mean, why would you come on the youth group trip? Obviously, you get to spend time with us, but other than that, I think it's just like, not only like I think the adults have an amazing impact on the kids too. I think that like that relationship like is the strength of the youth group is built in the youth group and the adults of the church. I think that's how it is like ingrained in the church, and I think it is like invaluable. Obviously, we need adults not only to be like supervisors, but it like we need them to just like ground us in our duty there. So you should definitely come.
Well, speaking as an adult leader on the trip, I think the thing that I enjoyed the most was kind of being able to obviously like engage with all the youth on the trip, but then also having the like adult leader community to engage with as well. So like when all the students would go and do their small groups, we would meet. And I think it was just really, really nice to be able to like find community with the other adult leaders, and then like Jason's saying, like be able to see familiar faces around church and be like, oh yeah, we went on that trip together. You know, I think just building community with both aspects, youth group and kind of like adult community, was awesome.
The two huge benefits I think you get as an adult leader on these. One is keeps you young. And two is if you need hope for the future, come on a youth mission trip.
That is a great note to end on. Our live stream is about to sort of wrap up. I would encourage you to continue the conversation. Our youth are amazing, totally amazing. The best part of my week every week is youth group and confirmation and all the time that I get to spend with our youth. So I'm really, really grateful to them for sharing their time, for our adult leaders for sharing their time and expertise this morning. And if you listened to this presentation and you thought to yourself, wow, I want to go on a youth mission trip, you know where to find me. Would love to talk more. So thanks you all. Thanks so much for being part of this, and thank you all for being here. And I think I have one more thing to share with Social Justice Forum folks. Apologies here. Next week's Social Justice Forum will be led by Sarah Peterson, the Director of Programs at Second Harvest Heartland. So hope you can join us for that. Thanks so much.